Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back to a very exciting and dangerous episode of the World Builder's Anvil. Once again, I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram, and let's talk about religions. And now, straight off the bat, I want to apologize to any very religious person who is about to listen to this. You might take offense at some of this, and for that, I apologize. I'm not trying to make it good or bad assertions about any religion, Christianity or otherwise on earth. But it is something that I think makes invaluable investment to develop in a culture and a race on earth or any other planet. First thing you have to think about when you think about is religion. When you talk about religions and cultures, I think personally early on, especially in early planet development, before you have major cultures, the religions are sort of developing as the culture is. And so some of the rites, some of the symbols, some of the rituals that happen to a culture are going to be encapsulated into this thing that becomes a religion. And early on, you might have some common beliefs that your ancestors are important. Well, if your ancestors are important, you're probably going to have stories about ancestors, myths involving people who have died, possibly after they've been dead. It all depends on your culture. But these stories, over time, will slightly change unless a strong oral tradition is brought up, to where there's a rhythm to the words being spoken so that over years a person can master the stories and tell them exactly the same every time. But from the time they start until they get to that point, there's going to be some variation in the stories. And then if you get into the written word and they start writing down the stories, at that point there's probably going to be some modifications in editing at least to make it work better as a written word rather than as an oral story. And if the audience of these religious stories you're writing down are going to be the actual believers, they might be different than if it's for the people priests, the holy people of a society who perhaps teach the people about the beliefs. So there are a lot of things to keep in mind with religions, but it comes down to really some fundamental things you want to look at for religions to sort of flesh them out. One is common rituals. I was raised a Lutheran, so for me, there were some common rituals. One, you have communion. That's very important. You get married, you get baptized, you get confirmed. Those are some common rituals that happen. But now beyond that, there was just going to church. That was really a ritual in a way. On Sunday, you would be dressed up by your mom and you'd be taken to church and or dad. So you have these common rituals, these things you do, and they might go beyond the actual participation in religious observance, at least officially. You have Catholics and Orthodox people who do variations of the sign of the crucifix on their body. For whatever reason, I never quite understood that one. I see Catholics and especially do that because there's more Catholics from where I'm at. I have nothing against that, but it's something that they do that I do not. And there's nothing wrong with that. You see some Christians put a little cross on their head on Ash Wednesday out of ashes. I think it's kind of gross. At least I'm hoping they're not dead people ashes. They're probably not. Probably be illegal, but at least in the modern world. But a lot of people do that. And obviously, especially I believe in China at least, there's a lot of ringing bells for religious purposes. And yeah, I guess you have that in a way in the West too, with the church bells that would ring. Those are rituals. It's, once again, some of them are going to be things that you barely even think about. And other things are bigger things like you have a liturgy of Mass for your religion. That would be a big thing to write. And I probably wouldn't write the whole Mass, but I would probably write the purpose of it. But however far you want to develop, it's up to you. It depends on how important it is to your story. You could have a whole book that takes place as just an intrigue during a church Mass, a very long church Mass. And so you have all of these activities happening that's going on during the Mass So you keep interacting with the service. You need to know a lot of detail about the actual ritual. Otherwise, it's probably more important that 3 hours a day on Sundays you've lost, or you're going to be on the outside of the cultural norm. Now, common beliefs. There's some beliefs that are common beyond specific religions. Up until recently, most Christians did not call themselves that. It was sort of this idea of I'm a Baptist or I'm a Lutheran, I'm a Catholic. And for more political reasons, it's sort of become this Christian thing, which there's nothing bad with that, I guess, unless you dislike the things that they're pushing politically. But they still have some common beliefs. This person, Jesus, Muslims with Prophet Muhammad being the last prophet, Jesus not being a god but a prophet. And once again, I'm not saying what is good or bad in any of those beliefs. My point being, they have them. And don't think that all religions are sort of like what we think of today, where beliefs have to be in the afterlife. There are, early religions where you thankfully were dead and didn't come back and didn't go anywhere, because if you went anywhere, you were bad, and it was worse than earth. Earth itself might be the hell in a religion. The planet you live on could be the hell. Don't think it's always about salvation. However, one of the things that I find consistent with all religions that I've read about, which has been is there's always this offering of protection against something. So maybe life sucks here on earth, but if I don't offer that oxen to the God, he will smite me down and send me to the bad place instead of letting me just die. Or if I don't get killed by a spear in battle, I don't go to Valhalla. So, it's not always about afterlife or salvation, but it's usually about protection from something beyond the control of people. Maybe you're afraid of another tidal wave. So you live in a society that when they first came into the area, some people started moving down to this wonderful delta on the edge of an ocean, and a big tidal wave came in and flattened. And so you get a flood story from that. And so you maybe make sacrifices to gods to prevent that from happening again. So there's a protection from something, but don't think it's necessarily tied to the afterlife. It might or might not be. And on the other hand, don't think it's about the gods. A religion does not have to be about supernatural creatures, whether or not they're real. I'm not, once again, saying whether or not any god is real or not real in this. I'm saying in the context of a fantasy world, they probably are. That's why it's fantasy. In the science fiction world, they're probably fictional as well, too. However, if you believe in a God you're talking about, that's up to you. But they don't have to be about gods. Sometimes gods are even bad. You can have religions where the gods are evil and you look to maybe spirits to protect you from the gods. So gods might be important, but maybe you don't want to even say the name of a god because that could curse you. You can go in any direction you want to, just as long as they have common rituals, common beliefs, and common symbols. And the symbols will be a subset of the cultural symbols. So no matter what, if the culture believes in this religion, there are going to be shared symbols between the two. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you have some that you want to be a holy symbol for a culture who follows this religion, make sure the culture has it as a symbol as well. Or realize that if the culture adopts the religion, those symbols of the religion will become important to it, along with the other symbols of the culture. And once again, they're going to have common stories, common ways of delivering those ideas to you of what is morally good and morally bad. Because that's a lot of times where the religion will form itself. And myths, that's the whole point of a myth, is to tell you what's good and what's bad. And so some of these become religious, and some of them just become parables, things that you tell your kid not to do. And sometimes, if you're not very well trained in your religion, you might mix the two up, which I've heard people do, where they've told you to be a good Christian, you have to do blah. But that's not really a Christian rule from the Bible or even from doctrine. It's maybe a Buddhist rule that people heard that they thought was really good. And so it starts to overlap and confuse people at times. It depends on their level of religious involvement. And usually early on, when you're worried about survival, you see a much higher rate of participation in religions. You need protection. Now, the rating for this episode is intermediate. It's one of those things I think it's important to do, but it might not be for your story. And if it's not important for your story, you shouldn't spend much time on it. If it's important for your story, or you're doing a role-playing world where you need more details, or you're doing a video game where you need details of what a church looks like and the kind of symbols, cover it. If this is not your story, you should probably scratch over it at least a little bit, but I wouldn't get as obsessed as what I do with it. The world building task for the day: make a list of the main characters in your world. And what is their religion? Now, it might sound a little strange for something to do with religion, but that makes you think, what is the religion here? And it's very easy if you're doing a modified Earth, you can pick Earth religions, but maybe there's a religion in your modified Earth that we don't know about. Maybe it's the real religion, maybe it's a bad religion that we don't know about. Assign people a religion and say, should there be part of their character, things that they do naturally without even thinking, that is just an external outflow of their belief in a religion. Maybe it's as simple as, I have a character who has a little piece of metal on his neck, and he rubs the metal. And that's a religious thing that you never even tell the people reading why he's doing it. It gives you a character action that would be very real for this character to have, that is tied back to this thing that they might not even know why if they're reading he's doing it. Now, the real world task for the day is, now, you probably guessed this one because I haven't done it in a couple of episodes. It's note time. Make a note to someone you love. Just say, hey, I love you. You're pretty, whatever. Very simple, 1-2 lines. This one, you want to go and you want to place it on their desk or on the seat of their car, and so they can find this note and they can feel a little bit better about themselves starting off another day or ending a day. So, until next time, when we talk about languages, once again, something I very, very much enjoy. I think it's very important to think about languages, and we'll know more about that next time. And as always, make sure to go to gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under podcasting, World Builders Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to, and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us this episode of the World Builders Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at Gardul.com, to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike while the myth rolls high.